Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Duggar. Now, many have heard of burnout. It's a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion. It's often caused by excessive and prolonged stress, or that feeling that you're just swamped at whatever it is you're doing. It might not just be in work, might be in areas of your life, family, other events going on. A lot of things can contribute to that. Now, my guest today, Michael D. Levitt, is the founder and chief burnout officer of the Breakfast Leadership Network. It's a San Diego and Toronto based burnout consulting firm. He's a keynote speaker on the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, and burnout. He's the host of the Breakfast Leadership Show. He's a certified NLP and CBT therapist, a Fortune 500 consultant, and author of his latest book, Burnout Proof, as well as two other books. So we're going to get into the topic today. I want to start a little bit, Michael, by first welcoming you on the show.
Great to be here with you today.
Thank you. Thank you. And I wanted to ask in regards to this, before you are doing what you're doing now, you had a career in working in the corporate industry, working with large corporations, organizations. Can you share a little bit about that experience? What type of work you were doing?
I've done all kinds of different things. My original
Yeah.
career was public accounting, and as I joke with people, April 16th, I still have this sense of relief in my shoulders, even though I have not been in that profession since a long time ago. But still,
Yeah.
there's just it's in my DNA now. It's like, oh, why do my shoulders feel so much better today? It's because tax season is over, and for those
Right.
that are in the midst of that right now, I feel you. I know what it feels like. It's tough go, but we're getting there. We'll get there and get it all done. But for me, I started off in that field and then
Yeah.
ventured into a lot of different industries, both in corporate and also nonprofit, and
Okay.
worked in IT, worked in finance, worked in, prior to my role with this organization, I was in healthcare. I worked in
Yeah.
healthcare for over a decade, and I was a healthcare executive. And that's where I had my burnout experience,
Yeah.
and it changed me for the better. Not that I would wish burnout on anybody, but for me, it was required for me. I think
Yeah.
to change the way that I was living and how I was approaching life, and also, my mindset around life and work and the relationship between the two of them.
Yeah. Absolutely. How you mentioned your burnout experience. Tell us a little bit more about what you went through during a period of time as you experienced that burnout.
Yeah, back in 2007, I was hired as a healthcare executive just outside
Yep.
of Windsor, Ontario. That's across the border from Detroit, Michigan, for those that aren't familiar with that area. And that's important to know because when I get a little bit deeper into the story of what happened, it's important
Yeah.
on the location where I was. So I was hired as this healthcare executive for this startup healthcare organization. I'd never
Okay.
worked in healthcare in my life. I had startup experience, but never in healthcare. And I was
Yep.
actually an employee there for a year before they told me why they hired me. So I just went, okay, they hired me. Okay, get to work.
Yep.
They told me that they knew that I would be able to learn whatever I needed to learn and be able to adapt accordingly, which I did, which meant a lot of hours. As anybody that's ever launched a business, they know that there's a ton of hours involved. And even though I was an
Right.
employee, I took it upon myself to make this organization mine. So I just went in all in and was working insane hours, basically 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week for 2 solid
Wow.
years.
Okay.
And when you do that, when you're working those types of hours, number one, you're typically not getting in the exercise or activity that you should.
Hmm.
We all know
Yep.
that the executives have really good parking spots that typically are close to the building. So I wasn't getting in a lot of physical activity. Of
Right.
course, working those long hours, my nutrition plan was not good. I'll give you a hint. It was basically
Hmm.
ordering through a microphone, getting food handed to me in a brown bag, and then me inhaling it really quick. And
Right.
much like my dog does with food, it just inhales it. It's like, did you even chew that? So I think
Right.
that was how I was too. So
Yep.
not getting exercise, eating foods that, well, quite frankly, were not good for me, and the stress of a startup, and that just built up over time. So fast
Yeah.
forward a couple of years to May of 2009, and it was a Monday evening in the spring in May, and I was after work, I was mowing my front lawn, and I had an electric lawnmower because we had a small lawn, and gas prices were high then, as they are
Hmm.
at this moment.
Yep.
So I had this electric mower, and this thing was bulky. It was old, weighed a ton. So it was really hard to turn. So I mow a first row on my lawn, and I go to turn to mow another row, and I felt this really sharp pain in the center of my chest,
Yeah.
and it hurt. It was so painful that I couldn't finish mowing the lawn. I was able to get the lawnmower at least in the backyard and shut it off, and went inside, took some pain medication, and the
Yeah.
pain went away unless I lifted anything with my right arm. I'm left-handed, so I don't
Okay.
tend to lift a lot of things with my right arm. I do more now
Yep.
than I did before, but, being a southpaw, you're usually using the left hand for pretty much everything. So
Right.
not using that arm very often, didn't think much of it. When I lifted, that pain would be there, and it felt like I pulled a muscle. So I was like, okay, because that's what I blamed it on, because I thought,
Right.
well, I just twisted wrong and pulled something. So went about my business. Really didn't bug me that much throughout the week. Thursday night of that week, went out to dinner at a local restaurant, and they had an all-you-can-eat special, and I took them up on
Perfect.
that offer,
Mhm.
and ate all kinds of fried, greasy, really not good for you, but really tasty food, and, of
Yep.
course, washed it down with a handful of adult beverages, and great night, and
Of
I get
course.
home, I go to bed, I wake up about an hour or so after I went to bed with that pain that I had Monday night, but it was at least 100 times worse. It
Yeah.
literally felt like there was an elephant standing on my chest. I immediately thought, okay, well, indigestion kicked in early. So I went to the bathroom, I took some Tums, I was able to fall asleep. So Friday morning, I go to work. That pain that I'd been feeling anytime I lifted anything with my right arm was persistent. It wasn't going away.
Yeah.
So after working about 45 minutes, and reminder, I'm working in a medical clinic. So I
Right.
talked to our lead physician, and I said, explained to him what was going on. He said, okay, well, let's listen. So he listened to the stethoscope, and he just kind of looked at me a little bit. He said, you know what? It's probably nothing, but we've got the EKG equipment here. Why don't we run a couple tests just to make sure everything's okay, and then we'll go from there. It's like, okay, so give us a few minutes. We'll get the room prepped, and then we'll run the test.
Yep.
So after a few minutes, our nurse calls us back, and I go back in there, and all of a sudden they start laughing and making sexual harassment jokes because their
Okay.
boss was taking his clothes off at work in front
Mhm.
of the employee. Not typically allowed in most HR manuals. So
Right.
I'm red as a tomato. I'm embarrassed. Can't believe what's going on. And finally they said, okay, okay, enough laughs. Let's go ahead and do this. So they run the
Yeah.
test. They see the results. They're a bit perplexed, and they go, you know what? We haven't ran this test a lot. We're going to disconnect all the electrodes, and then we're going to reconnect them and put all the new
Yep.
leads on and run the test again. So they did. And the results came back the same. So they said, all right, we'll get dressed. And we're going to send this off to Hotel de Grace Hospital in Windsor, and
Yep.
we'll wait to hear what they say. A few minutes later, Dr. Gina from Hotel de Grace, cardiologist there, calls and says, tell Michael to get his butt in the hospital right now, and he cannot drive here. So I had a pretty significant heart attack that Thursday night. I had two
Yeah.
blockages in my left interior descending artery. Now, if you're not familiar with that artery, it has a nickname in cardiology world. It's called the widowmaker. Because
Mm.
typically, if you have blockages in that artery and you
Yep.
have a cardiac event, you are being viewed instead of seen. And
Right.
I, I was very, very fortunate, even to the point where Dr. Morsi, who was the surgeon that put the stents in my artery, when
Yep.
he came in because I went in on a Friday, or it's actually, yeah, Tuesday morning is when I was finally able to get the surgery because backlogs and health. I'm not going to get into the details of healthcare
Right.
challenges in Canada, but uh, needless to say, he came in Tuesday morning to perform the procedure. First time I'd
Yeah.
met Dr. Morsi, and my mom and my former wife were to the right of me, and I'm laying in bed getting ready for the procedure. And Morrissey comes up to me and he leans in, doesn't say good morning, doesn't say hi, doesn't say anything. He comes up,
Mhm.
he looks at the chart for a minute, and he leans in, he looks at me, he says, "You know, you should be dead right now."
Mm.
And of course, my former wife and my mom are gasping and then start bawling. I look
Yeah.
at him and I said, "I see you skipped bedside manner class in medical school." And then we both started laughing. Of course, Jen and my
Right.
mom were bawling, and we're having laughs about it. And he's
Sure.
like, "Okay, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna put the stents in, and
Yep.
we should be able to maybe we might have to put in a third one, but from everything we're seeing, it's probably two." So they put in the stents. I get released the next day, and then I'm on short-term disability for about 17 weeks.
Okay. Yep.
After that, I go back to a job, and they decided they wanted to go in a different direction, so they laid me off. So
Okay.
here I am 17 weeks later after having a cardiac event, and now I'm losing my job. So in
Yeah.
2009, anybody remember the Great Recession?
Mm.
I'm across the border from
Yes.
I'm across the border from Detroit. You're
Yep.
familiar with this. The government had to bail out the auto sector because they were going to go out of business. So
Right.
GM and Chrysler for sure were in deep, deep trouble. Ford was teetering. So when you're in that area, those employers have such a huge ripple effect on the economy in that area still to this day.
Yep.
Not as much, but it's still a big footprint. So if those companies go out of business, you have just horrible situations. So nobody's hiring, no one's leaving. There's cutbacks and layoffs because there's a recession going on. So here I am, fresh off of this, and going, okay, now I'm unemployed.
Yep.
Now I have to go find a job. And I went on interview after interview, and I was interviewing for months. And I finally found a role in Toronto, thankfully, which required a relocation and uprooting a young family and everything like that.
Yep.
So I get up to Toronto, and I'm commuting on the weekends back to Windsor because we're trying to find a place to live in Toronto. So still had the
Right.
house in the Windsor area. So I get a phone call. It was, I think, my second week there. My oldest daughter, who was 10 at the time, called, and she's crying, and I can't understand a thing she's saying. And finally, I was able to get from her that the bank had come and repossessed our family vehicle. So
Okay.
when you're on unemployment for a long period of time, and I know a lot of people may be in that situation or have been in that situation,
Yep.
you know that that money is not the same that you were making before. It's quite a bit less. So when you're on unemployment and you're on heart medication that costs $1,000 a month out of pocket, and you have no drug insurance coverage, you got to make some
Yeah.
choices. Feed the family, medication to keep me alive, or
Yep.
make the car payment or the mortgage. Well, you know what I did, and
Yep.
we reached out to our creditors and we told them exactly what was going on, and they were all very gracious to a
Right.
point. They
Yeah.
eventually have to collect, and of course, Great Recession. There was we know about the home foreclosures and all of that was going on, and
Right.
people losing things and all of that. So it was a really difficult time, which is why I'm really concerned about what's happening now, because it's like, oh, I see history repeating itself. But I'm
Sure.
on the other side of that wall, which is an interesting perspective for me,
Right.
just from a mental standpoint, just kind of looking at it and going, okay, this is not me. It's not happening to me, but it still, of course, brings back some challenging memories, to say the least. So here I
Sure.
am, heart attack, job loss. Oh, now the car's been repoed. Great. So we finally moved the family up at the end of May. So just about a year after my cardiac event, get everything moved up. And then we realized that we forgot the bunk bed ladder for our daughter's bed back at the
Yep.
house that we were getting ready to list. So I was going back there the following weekend to visit with some friends. And then I said, well, I'll just swing by the house, grab the ladder and anything else that we had, happened to forget. So I
Right.
had my visit, went to the house, went into the front door, opened the screen door, and saw the largest padlock I've ever seen in my life. You can't buy
Mm.
this padlock at Home Depot. And
Right.
there was a sticker on the door that said foreclosure. So in a year, 369 days to be exact, heart
Yep.
attack that should have killed me, lost my job during the Great Recession, had my car repossessed, and then finally my home foreclosed. And all of those things happened to me because I was burned out. I wasn't taking care of myself.
Yeah.
I was making mistakes at work that warranted the decision to go a different direction. When you don't make your car
Sure.
payment and you don't make your house payment, the bank has the right. It's a legal agreement. I've never been
Yep.
mad. I've never been mad at anybody. I was never mad at my former employers. I understood their decision on it. Was never
Yep.
mad at the bank that had the loan with our car. I've banked with them since. I don't
Right.
bank. I don't bank at the bank that we got our mortgage through just because they don't have a presence as big of a presence here. But it wouldn't
Yep.
preclude me from banking with them again. I don't blame them.
Right.
We had an
Yep.
agreement. I didn't meet the agreement terms, so they reserved the right and they exercised it. But all of those things happened because I was burned out. And when you have all those things happen to you at once, it, I had a couple choices. One, I could have said, "Wow, I'm Superman. I can withstand anything. All right, I'm just going to go about life carefree, not do
Right.
anything, not make any adjustments. I'm still here. I'm
Yep.
alive. I'm great." I knew really quick that that was not the right choice to make. So I said, all right, I need to, one, start living better, healthier,
Okay. Yep.
and also start approaching my relationship with work and me differently. And that is an ongoing thing. A lot of people, look at me and go, wow, you've got it together. I'm like, yeah, more or less. But
Sure.
I still do work on me because it's an ongoing project.
Right.
And I tell people this all the time. Everyone should have a therapist. Everyone. There's
Mhm.
something in your life or maybe in your past that has been unaddressed that's holding you back. Get a therapist. You've never been able to access them easier than you have been today. And as more
Yep.
and more, advocates and mental health and awareness and discussion around it, the access to it is so much easier now than it used to be. There's
Right.
still, of course, a stigma for some, but you got to get past that because you're investing in yourself. But that's how I got, the burnout and all of that.
Yep.
And from there, I went, my new job that I had found in Toronto was in healthcare. My parents wanted to have me committed. They're like, "Are you crazy? You're going back to the
Right.
field that almost killed you." And I said, "I'm going to do it
Yep.
better." And I did. And
Yeah.
I didn't work the crazy hours anymore. I was more productive. I was doing well. I was able to help with some expansion of some clinics and bringing on new
Yep.
people to provide more access to healthcare in an underserviced area and recruit new physicians and all the fun stuff that you get to do in healthcare. I was able to be
Yeah.
successful
Yeah.
and I wasn't burning out. But
Yep.
as I was doing this, yeah, I started looking at my peers, and this was in 2015. And I'm looking, going, "Uh-oh, these people look like they're burning out." So I was like, "Okay, I gotta
Mhm.
start warning them." So, kind of went like
Right.
Paul Revere, the burnout is coming, the burnout is coming, and
Yep.
like I ignored it and didn't do anything with it. And
Right.
I thought, well, I should dig into this a little bit more. So I started researching burnout and opened up that
Yeah.
Pandora's box and the work that had been done
Yep.
for a long time. Dr. Maslach out in California. I have a book that's titled, it's not my book, it's a book that was written and published
Yep.
in 1980 titled Burnout. So, and you read that book, and I read it every couple of years. I pull it out and look at it,
Yeah.
and there's a couple things in there you can tell it's old, but some of that is like you could
Right.
put in a book today and it would be applicable. And it's like, okay, well, humans haven't evolved that much. Okay, great. So it's something that's been around for a long time, but as discussion is happening and all of the different stressors that we're seeing in this world, it's a lot more amplified than it's ever been. And it's really
Yeah.
concerning. So I thought after doing the research and I started writing about it, then it came to me that, this is probably a path that I need to walk. And
Yep.
so I went through the exercise of launching a business, launching the Breakfast Leadership Show, writing books, speaking on stages across the globe about it, and just, being interviewed and magazine and print and radio and all of that. And it created, a life of its own. And I joke with people, nothing would make me happier than if burnout would go away and then I'd have to go find something else to do. I would be thrilled. I'd be
Sure.
ecstatic.
Right.
But I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon. So
Yeah.
the work that I have to do is still important. I still have to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you went through that period of extreme burnout and experience of loss, which contributed to that as well. But then you were able to come out on the other side and work in the healthcare field, but do it differently and experience more productivity and more satisfaction, more fulfillment. But like you said, you were then seeing your peers, colleagues, people that were doing the same things, experiencing the burnout that you were had already gone through. So you knew the signs, you recognized it, but yet people aren't going to always identify it in themselves. So as you dug in further, you found a path that you're continuing to walk down today. Now at the top of the show, when we were talking prior to going live here, you had mentioned to me that you would go through that experience again if you were to have to be able to get to where you are today. Tell us a little bit about that mindset because I think there are a lot of people that would hear that story and say, that's crazy. I would never want to go through that. But sometimes you have to walk through difficulties.
Yeah, it's important. And I always like to say this when I'm on shows or being interviewed.
Yeah.
99% of people that are burned out or are burning out right now or are approaching burnout do not need to reinvent their life. Because I think a lot of people
Yeah.
think, whoa, I have to change everything. Does that mean, does that mean I have to cheer for the Wolverines and I went to Michigan State? What are you talking that kind of
Right.
crazy level? It's like, or for me, living in Toronto, does that mean I have to root for the Leafs and not the Red Wings? Not a chance. But anyway, that's another story for another day. But most people do not have to reinvent themselves. It's
Yeah.
really, really tiny adjustments. I don't like you saying the word change because that tends to run people out the door and they're scared and they disconnect from this interview and everything like that. It's
Yep.
adjustments. It's little things. What are they? That depends on you. Because a lot of people
Yeah.
think that once you're burned out, that's the treadmill that you're always going to be on forever and ever, and that's not the case. If you make some adjustments, you can, get back to a more normal-ish state for you. The deeper
Yep.
work, and this is where a lot of the work that I do with teams and, when I'm coaching individuals as well, is we got to figure out why you burned out. What
Yeah.
were the ingredients that turned this into the situation that you found? And that's why I went and pursued and I got my certifications in NLP and CBT because I kept running against this when I was working with people. That it
Yeah.
was the language they use in their mind,
Hmm.
the behaviors, the thoughts, the patterns, all the things that they do. Well, I should do this. I'm a C-suite executive. I should work 40 hours a day. Like, no,
Right.
no. See, you're wearing yourself out. Your cognitive abilities drop. And I just saw a study this morning from the Journal of American Medicine that indicated that prolonged stress, intense stress is impacting the cognitive ability of older people at a much more alarming rate than other age groups. That's impacting
Yeah.
everybody. It is, we've seen studies on, stress and burnout, how it impacts your cognitive ability, your ability to recognize patterns, your relationships, everything, which was point, was front and center on that.
Right.
Making mistakes, not doing things clearly, working too many hours didn't work out. I changed it. Okay, I'm gonna have boundaries around my work. Hey, wow, I'm getting more done. Weird. How's
Yep.
that happen? Well, it's because you're doing things more effectively. You're delegating. You have the right people in place to do things for you.
Yep.
Even if you're an individual, you know, sort things out. So there was a lot of work that I did on myself that makes a lot of sense. It's like when you do a job. Let's say you're working on some things all week, and y- if you schedule how you work and you schedule your life, you're going to be better at it because you're going to know what times are good for you to work and what
Yep.
times are not. If
Right.
you asked me right now at the time of this recording, okay, I want you to go through this spreadsheet. It's got a ton of numbers. Do some analysis on the reports and do some projections, financial projections and things like that. You might as well ask me to paint like Picasso. It's like it's not going to happen because
Yeah.
my cognitive abilities of looking and analyzing spreadsheets at this time of day is not strong. You ask me to
Hmm.
do that in the morning around 8 or 9 a.m., not a problem. I know that about me. And one of the things that came about during the pandemic when so many people were working different hours than they were used to because maybe they had
Yep.
kids and they had help and all that. Many people found that, that 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. window for some reason for some people that is a sweet spot for them as far as productivity, clarity. They've got a little bit of a groove. They're bouncing around.
Yep.
They're enjoying what they're doing. It's everybody needs to find out when their sweet spot time is to work on things that they're working on. And if you can align that, it flows better. Just like
Yeah.
batching tasks. We've heard people say that. It's like there's a reason for that because certain tasks use certain parts of your brain. If you batch things together, then you're using one side of your brain and other
Yep.
things are the other side. Once you know what that is for you, all of a sudden you're getting more things done because you're not going against pressure or hurdles as much because you're just in a flow, and it's such a big deal to do that. But to go back to your original question about why would I go through that again,
Yeah.
and not change anything, because then I wouldn't be who I am today. And
Right.
all of our experiences, good, bad, indifferent, build us to who we are. When people go through tough lives and they have challenges and they get bricks thrown at them, I tell them stack those bricks. You'll be able to
Yep.
use them as steps and be able to ascend above all of that, and you'll find yourself in a better place. You look at
Absolutely.
all the successful people in the world, all whatever you define as success. Many of them slept in their car for the first 5 years of their career, or they were homeless, or they couldn't get
Right.
any gigs, or they couldn't no one would show up to their events, or they couldn't do this, and all of a sudden, they just were persistent, they kept at it, and then finally, they were able to get past some of that, and then you look at 'em like, "Wow, they're really successful." Yeah,
Mm.
they are. They put it's the 15-year overnight success story. Um
Yeah. Right.
Now, of course, in this world, there's always going to be those anomalies where somebody may come up with something and take right
Yeah.
off. I have a family member that growing up, we're the same age, and he tried all kinds of different things,
Yep.
and was clearly not somebody that would be comfortable working for somebody. He was definitely going to be an entrepreneur, and was not. It didn't work. So
Yep.
his dad was the same way, and so, he tried different things. And then finally, out of a hobby of something that he enjoyed, there was equipment that he would use in this hobby. And he didn't like how it worked. So he started
Hmm.
tinkering around. And then he ended up making something that he liked. And he's like, wow, this
Yep.
is much better. I like how this interacts with everything else. So he thought, you know what? Maybe I should, try this out. And, he
Right.
demonstrated it to other people that, would be in the same type of genre. And now there are world famous people using that equipment. And he
It's
is
amazing.
well off.
Yep.
He's never given me any money. I will never ask for any money
Yeah.
because it's not like, "Oh, wow, my cousin's rich," okay, great.
Yeah.
No, I'm his biggest cheerleader because
Absolutely.
I've known him since we were both babies, and I knew a long time ago, it's like, yeah, he's gonna keep at it, and he's gonna do well. Did I think he was gonna be, like, this crazy well? No, but you know what? It's just you just build and you keep at it and you keep at it. If there's something you're thinking you're on the cusp of something, keep going. And
Yeah.
success leaves clues. So study those that have been successful and like, okay, well, what did they do? And see if there's something that you can
Yep.
apply. And when you do that, it doesn't matter what you're doing in life. And your definition of success could be completely different from mine. But you tend to
Right.
see, a lot of similarities in when you ask people that are society deemed successful, what was the changing point for you? What does this create for you? And
Yeah.
it's amazing to watch.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll reemphasize one of those points that you made is that 99% of the people who are feeling burnt out don't have to reinvent themselves entirely. There's some lifestyle changes, some changes in routines that can be made, just sort of evaluation of where you're feeling that burnout, where is it coming from, so that you can make some adjustments and get through that effectively. And like you said earlier, there's a value added to receiving therapy. There's another component that people can experience a benefit from if they're going through some very difficult and stressful periods of times in their lives. And also those individuals who are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, you're probably going to be more productive if you work a little less, and you're going to last a whole lot longer in your business, in the work you're doing for your employer, as well as in life. Your health, your relationships, your finances will all follow.
Mhm.
So take a step back. Now, I do ask all of my guests a specific question. We're at that point in the show. If you were to be handed $1 million today, no restrictions, nothing specific, what would you do with that and why?
I would invest in my continued learning on being a better entrepreneur.
Okay.
And it could be a combination of using some new tools, new technologies that make me a bit more efficient and or create better offerings or coaching techniques or whatever I
Yeah.
provide for my customers.
Yep.
Sure, I mean, I could easily say, well, pay off the house or pay off
Sure.
this or buy this. And
Yep.
there's, and again, this goes back to your earlier question about, why would I not change anything? When you lose everything,
Hmm.
it gives you some insights on what's truly important in life.
Yep.
Cars, I don't care about cars.
Hmm.
Home, roof, shelter, warm in the winter, cool in the summer, I'm good.
Yep.
um, Toys and fun stuff and the latest, smartphone or computers or things like that. It okay, this version of the phone is, 3 years newer than the one I have. Okay, does it still
Yep.
work? Yep. Great.
Right.
I don't need that. And I'm not knocking people that want it. I mean, there's reasons why you might need the latest and greatest, especially if you use
Yep.
like a smartphone, for example. If you're into photography and this is your device, yeah, it makes
Right.
sense for you. It's a business tool,
Yep.
and you want to do that. But for me, when you lose everything, gives you perspective. It doesn't mean that I am this minimalist and go, I don't own anything. I have one fork and
Hmm.
one plate and one spoon. That's a little excessive.
Right.
That can cause you some stress because you're constantly going to be washing. Your hands are going to get chapped, and unless you're wearing gloves, and I think a lot of people are tired of wearing gloves after the last few years. So
Yep.
for me, it's like you have things in your life that are useful and beneficial to you to make your life easier for you to focus your time on doing what only you can do. And that's not just for an entrepreneur, but that's if you're
Yeah.
a spouse, a partner, a parent, a caregiver, a colleague, a boss, whatever. And try to streamline and simplify as much of your life as you can so that when you are doing things, you're fully present. You're not being hampered by, well, I got to do this or I got to do that. And
Yep.
if everybody's different when it comes to that, but find what makes you fulfilled in life and create a life that is fulfilling for you. And we all get to do that because
Absolutely.
it's our life. Yes, we might have to
Yep.
make some difficult choices and we may have to make some adjustments in our life that may not be popular with others, but you got to take care of you first.
Yeah. Absolutely. Finding that point of fulfillment for yourself and what that means to you is key. as well as your own definition of success, your neighbor's definition, the media's definition, the celebrity's definition. My definition of success is going to be different than yours. And so finding that for yourself is key and important. Now, if anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for someone to connect to you to discuss these topics or others?
Yeah, the best way first is to go to breakfastleadership.com. There's a
Yep.
contact link and page on this. So you can send me a note there. I'm on most of the
Okay.
social media channels. It's usually under the letter B and then fast leadership. Do not put
Yep.
that on a license plate. You'll get pulled over a lot. So don't do that. But I'm on most of the social media channels, pretty active on LinkedIn, but I'm on
Yep.
Instagram and Twitter. A little bit with TikTok now, but I'm just repurposing stuff that I put
Sure.
elsewhere. My YouTube channel and all that. I'm starting to build
Yep.
that and doing more video stuff. And then, of course, there's the Breakfast Leadership Show podcast on all your
Yeah.
favorite flavors, and you know about it because you were on my show yesterday. So
Yep.
it worked out really well that we got to chat again on this. So, but
Absolutely.
breakfastleadership.com will get you the links to all those pathways, links to my books and everything else.
Yeah. No, I encourage people to definitely reach out, check out Michael's stuff, check out his books as well. And if you're experiencing burnout in your own life, or if you're not, but you see that you're already walking that path of a stressful existence, busy, doing a lot of work, a lot of hours, have a lot going on, look into what that means to be burnt out, what that would look like if you were to get to that point, and start doing some things proactively now so that you don't get to that point in your life that you're experiencing a lot of things falling to the wayside. So I encourage you to check out Michael's books, check out his website, reach out to him, and make sure that you're walking that life that's defined for yourself, fulfillment, success, and the way that you see it to become. Michael, thank you very much for joining us on today's show.
Really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
All right, it's been a